Hey guys, Kinggath here with the Kinggath podcast. Today's guest has done some what I would call machinima work, which you don't see a ton of anymore for Fallout 4. That is absolutely fantastic. He's also recently released a tutorial to help some of you aspiring animators also do the same. Welcome, Pandamic.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you, man. I remember when I first saw the Dream video you put out, which you've done a series of Fallout 4. I would call them machinima. That's what you were going for, right?
Not really. I
Okay.
mean, usually when I think of the Fallout 4 machinima stuff, it's usually just free camera and manipulating the actors in the game the best way you can. Usually, machinima stuff doesn't use custom animations, so I was kind of treating, at least when I started doing animations for my videos, I was kind of thinking that it was more so leaning towards kind of making films briefly, or like kind of
Yeah,
in
I
a
mean,
way. I thought it was a step ahead what machinimas are, so it wouldn't be like appropriate to call them machinimas.
sure. It's kind of like, yeah, you take it to the next level. It's like little short films, and the animation work you've done, especially. I remember you had posted a video before. I think it was before Dream came out about you figured out how to manipulate the camera with
Yeah,
animation.
it was just a short video. Shortly after I figured out how to do animated cameras, just to let people know that it was a thing because I was very excited about it.
Oh man, it took them to another level. Like I watched through most of your videos yesterday, and the just to get refresh my mind on them, and the leap in quality once you add that camera animation is unreal. It's so good.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, I generally, well, because as I've made this stuff over time, my standard of quality has increased dramatically since some of the earlier videos that I made. So I'm at the point now where I generally consider some of my first videos to be garbage, and the newer ones are much better in my opinion.
That's how we all do it once we get in the creative field.
Mm,
When you start learning stuff and you look back at your old stuff, it's so cringy. It's like,
yep.
yeah, it almost makes you want to redo that stuff or hide it, like just like get it out of there
Yeah.
so only they can only see your best stuff. Yeah, I totally get
Mm,
that feel, man. So with something like Dream, it was clear you wanted to tell a story. You did a really excellent job of it, and it felt like you custom animated the camera a ton in that. Like there's not a lot of that. I know exactly what you're talking about when you described what machinima tends to be, people doing it all in game, and they try to just do their best with the tools that are available in the game, and then like you've stepped outside of that. It felt like you used very little in-game footage that didn't have some sort of extra touches to it. Is that accurate?
I think the way that it was about half and half.
Okay.
So the start of Dream and the end of Dream, those were pretty much all animated cameras, but in the middle, whereas the beef of the video, so to say, uh, I actually I finished Dream like a month. Yeah, no, actually about 2 months before I posted it,
Okay.
and there was originally a lot more free camera, normal, what you would expect from machinima kinds of videos in the video. And I actually went through the whole video and I removed a lot of shots that were free camera and I replaced them with animated cameras so that it looks better because I figured out animated cameras while I was working on Dream, and it was
Uh,
originally going to be just a bunch of free cameras, and I had to replace a ton of footage that was free cameras and I replaced it with animated cameras so it looks a lot better.
yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
so yeah, there's still a good amount of free cameras, but it's still a really uh, I'm still very happy with the amount of animated cameras I was able to get in there too.
Oh yeah, I mean, it looked like it took a ton of time. Not only just with the animation that you did, but just in collecting all the different footage clips must have taken a heck of a long time.
Oh yeah, uh, usually, well, because I finished Dream at the end of my junior year in high school, and
Wow.
it's I was about getting like one shot done a day.
Okay.
About I was working a few hours every single day, working at night to like some days I was working like 5 hours a day, which I don't work that much now. on this because time has changed. But back then, I was putting a lot of work every single day into this stuff, and it was just cruising along piece by piece. And some of like, I don't know, 30 seconds in that video could be like a month of work. It just took a very long time.
Yeah. Oh man, the fact that you've got that kind of commitment and dedication at that young, that's crazy, man. That's like, I see a lot of working creative adults who do not have the dedication and commitment required to do something of that level, to like put in, a month of work for 30 seconds of output. That's really, really awesome. So you've got a strong future ahead of you in animation, man, if that's the direction you're going, or filmmaking, or wherever you're headed. Where are you headed? What's next for you after all this?
Well, I have one more video inside of Fallout 4's engine that I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I'm gonna be looking to try to figure out some other programs, particularly Unreal Engine 4,
Sure.
because an associate, I guess, Asynchrony, he told me that Unreal Engine 4 has all these cool, fancy cinematic and film cutscene tools in it that you can actually use to almost use Unreal Engine 4 like you would use SFM, I guess, Source Filmmaker.
Sure.
You can kind of use Unreal Engine 4 in a similar way to that, or at least that's how it seems to me. And Unreal Engine 4 obviously has very pretty graphics.
Yeah.
And it's also a controlled environment, unlike Fallout 4. So I would be able to, if I were to figure out Unreal Engine 4, I would be able to make much more complicated stuff.
Sure.
And it would be organized, and I wouldn't need to trust in the game for something not to go wrong, because stuff always goes wrong when I record stuff in this game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It always goes wrong. It goes wrong when we're testing and building mods. I mean, that's part of the nature of Bethesda's games, though, is they're sandboxes with a bunch of systems crashing together, and that's just not great for filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the recent announcement of with Quixel, with the mega scans all going free in Unreal?
No, I haven't seen that.
So that's an amazing thing, because I love Quixel. It's such a great company. They're one of those companies that's trying to do something I see happening as a natural progression of where we're at with games technologies. They're trying to, what they call, democratize creativity in games. And so they do like photogrammetry scanning of things all over the world, all sorts of assets. And they've got like tens of thousands of textures and models and stuff. And they just got bought out by Epic, and Epic is letting you use all of their stuff for free. So there's just this massive library of models and textures that you can use from Quixel now in Unreal. So that's a great choice. Mm-hmm. Great choice for filmmaking, especially with how realistic that stuff looks.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool, because one of the using Fallout 4 to film and using something else like Unreal Engine to film stuff, they have pros and cons. Fallout 4 actually has a lot of pros, particularly the way that you have a world that's already built, you have models and textures that are already there, systems in place that are already there, and all I need to do is animate characters and make the animated camera. But in something like Unreal Engine 4, I would need to get the models, the textures, make sure the skeletons work on the characters, make sure there's no glitching going around with the assets that I would be putting into Unreal Engine 4.
Right.
And one thing that I would need to do if I were to, hopefully when I try to use Unreal Engine 4, is that I would probably be converting a lot of Fallout 4 assets, because, I would probably still be making some stuff within the Fallout universe within Unreal Engine. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So I would need to convert a lot of assets, get the textures working correctly, or maybe too, and this is something that I've been thinking about, perhaps when that time comes, I could get some people to help me from my Discord server. Maybe they could help me with converting assets. Maybe.
I'm sure there would definitely be people interested in doing that. I mean, seeing the stuff you're producing here, it's very. There are a lot of helpful people out in the community. As I've found, is that like once you're producing stuff that people love, you can definitely find help out there to get through, especially some of the grindier tasks like that, like converting mass amounts of assets would definitely probably get tedious after a while.
Yep.
So man, the fact that you're this young and you're pulling off videos this high quality is incredible. It's the stuff like this, like you've got storytelling chops too, clearly. Now you're leaning heavily on Fallout 4's existing dialogue to pull off the narration, but you've done it seamlessly. It works really well. Do you spend a lot of time like digging through the audio files, listening to what's available, or do you just know all this stuff you just remember it from playing through the game?
Well, when I made Dream, there was a lot of dialogue that I remembered, but most of the dialogue that I put in Dream were actually dialogue that I just found by searching through the game audio. I think there was this one program on Nexus Mods called like Fallout 4 Verts. I don't know what it stands for, but it was a mod that allowed you to look through every single piece of dialogue, see exactly what the subtitles are for, and listen to each piece individually without needing to export it. So I was able to use that to listen to tons of dialogue and find dialogue that I thought would work well inside the video. But
yeah, that's
obviously
a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
It's a VFRT, voice file reference tool. Yeah, I love that tool. We use that for exporting player dialogue when we're doing quest mods, so that we can not have to, you don't have to pre-extract them all, like you said, which is a giant pain in the butt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have thought in the past, with if I were to make something more ambitious in the future, I would probably need to ask people to, record stuff for me. But generally, I've been not wanting to do that because it sounds like more work than it would seem. And just sticking to dialogue that I can already get my hands on is just a lot simpler. So that's why I usually tend to lean towards that.
Sure. Well, you also get to connect with people who are already invested in the game. Like, I think, one of the nice things about building onto a franchise like this is you've got a giant audience automatically who love the franchise, and then they love these characters. Whereas if you're doing custom audio, you're likely going to be you're going to be creating new characters. Although I would think you have built up enough of a reputation doing this stuff now that people would be willing to check out some new characters you wanted to introduce if you had custom voice actors. So I can tell you for certain that there would be people interested in doing voice work for you. So that's But it is like, extra work. You've got to coordinate with more people and get them to do auditions and read the way you want it to. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more work involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the main reason why I don't lean towards it.
Sure.
Because I'm also just the kind of person who likes to work alone on stuff. I don't usually like direct collaboration because usually stuff gets messed up and communication isn't all that too good, in my opinion, when big projects like that are going down. So yeah, I'm still on the fence.
Yeah,
maybe I would do it. I would like to collaborate like that one day, but probably not.
Well, the nice thing about working solo there is you don't have anybody else trying to influence the creative process, so you can kind of just put whatever's in your imagination down.
Mm-hmm.
It also seems like you're clearly the type of person that will just go forth and figure out how to do something if you want to do it. Like, you don't need to rely on other people to solve some problems for you. Because if I'm understanding correctly, when I read the descriptions of your videos, it seems like you learned how to animate specifically for these projects. Is that true?
Yeah. I came up with the idea for Dream right after I made my Brotherhood of Steel video. And from that point, I knew that if I were to make this, I would need to make custom animations. So I tried figuring out how to make Fallout 4 animations by referring to old Skyrim tutorials on how to make animations. This was before the proper tools for Fallout 4 animations were released. And I didn't find what I was looking for, so I eventually just put it down and went to work on the Institute video instead. But then after that, the tools were released for Fallout 4 animation.
Yeah.
And I figured them out on my own, and I figured out how to do all this cool stuff on my own. I never asked anyone out there for help on it.
Well, that's very awesome of you that you're starting to offer help now, because you released a tutorial to help people get started, because there's a lot of information available for animation now. There's that Animator's Toolkit. There's a handful of tutorials people have put out through Nexus of just like some extra information to help people understand how the behavior files work, and some special rigs. And you put it together not only a tutorial to help people like get through all that, because it's really hard to parse through that when people are trying to get started, especially somebody maybe who has animation background, but they don't want to like bash their head against figuring out all this documentation that's not necessarily good. And you kind of streamlined it down to about a 15-minute video to help people get started. And then you started a Discord channel to help people. So I think that is just fantastic of you to do, given that you prefer to work alone. So that's awesome that you did that.
Mm-hmm. When I made that tutorial, it was my intention that this was supposed to be something to help people that had no idea how to actually start. So I wanted to explain the basics as well as I could, and I wanted to make sure that a person could finish that video and understand exactly what they would need to do to start making animated cameras. And I think that's important because information on Fallout 4 animations, on like how to do them elsewhere from like, I don't know, Nexus Mods and on YouTube is very, very slim. There's not much YouTube videos, there's not much conversations that you can find of people discussing ways of doing things with Fallout 4 animation. But the worst part, I guess, is that the only place where you can actually find that information is on Lover's Lab, which has absolute tons of not safe for work animation help. And yeah, it would be very awkward to actually refer to that and stuff. So
we always refer to that on this. I talk about that a lot on this podcast, that it's Lover's Lab are like the forerunners of modding. They always go forth and figure out way more stuff than everybody else because they have a whole different agenda than those of us playing. But it's you gotta be willing to go into incognito mode to go surf around down there.
Yeah.
But
frankly, yeah, I've never actually went to Lover's Lab to try and figure stuff out, but I've heard things from other people that there is actually a surprisingly high amount of detailed tutorials there and information, and it's all people making mods which have no, there is passion behind their mods, but there's no, important, story or lesson, I don't know, behind the stuff that they're making there, but coincidentally they have the most important resources there
right.
Well, some of the most important.
Well, yeah, I mean, they want what they want so badly, they're willing to like experiment and figure out how to get that stuff done, and then fortunately they share that information, so we've all benefited from it. I'm pretty sure that the whole animation toolkit that came out for Fallout 4 back then is because of those guys, so props to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But yeah, that toolkit ended up being very, very useful. I personally have I've barely scratched the surface with animation stuff in Fallout 4. And mostly just because I have enough other projects going on my plate. But man, it's really powerful what you can do, and surprising how much Bethesda opened it up compared to, if you look at, like you said, you started researching doing animation for Skyrim, and like what a pain that was by comparison to what, I mean, Fallout 4 is a pain in its own right, but it's a lot more open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tools for Fallout 4 animation, from what I've seen, are definitely a lot better than the tools for Skyrim animation. Some of the brief stuff that I've learned when I was looking through Skyrim animation when I was starting out this animation stuff, they didn't have any like official easy to use programs to like convert the animations and stuff like that. They had to use command prompts, and they exported animations from Blender, I think. Yeah, I think some of them were actually, but yeah, it definitely wasn't as clean as it is with the tools that people have made for Fallout 4. And I think because of that, we've seen a ton of Fallout 4 animation mods that are just very high in quality, especially for guns and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the weapon mods have been fantastic ever since the animation information was released. But I think there's so much room to do more than that. Like on my team, we've been doing a lot of story content lately, and we've been experimenting with like in-game cinematic type stuff. And like seeing your stuff is inspirational because it's like there's no reason that what you did you recorded that all in the game. There's no reason that we couldn't see more stuff like that in quest mods and things like that to have that kind of stuff baked in. In fact, I believe you are the one who put out, or you did the animation for, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Doc Weathers scene for Fallout 4 New Vegas. Is that true?
Yes, that's a very bad animation. I'm not proud of that.
You know what? I think those of us who are Fallout 4 New Vegas junkies, we saw that and our just heads exploded because it looks quite good to us. We don't have our the critic's eye that you do, and we just saw like that old sequence that we remember from God. When did New Vegas come out? Like 2010, 2009?
Yes. Yeah.
And so like we see this like 10-year-old thing come back to life in better fidelity. It's fantastic to see. So I think you crushed that one, but that so it's totally plausible to do longer form cool animations right in engine and make it part of mods, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
The biggest problem, well, there's a few problems.
Okay.
Clearly, the game wasn't necessarily made to have a cutscenes where the camera moves around and is detached from your player character.
Sure.
It does not seem like that was intended. The animated cameras actually come from the workbenches where the camera moves to the side to show your character working.
Right.
The camera position is actually animated. Well, it's posed, and that's why Bethesda made the annotations to have animated cameras trigger. But for cutscenes that people would want to put in mods, there's problems like you can't actually really cut between two different cameras.
Okay.
I tried that, like cutting between anim object A and anim object B. The camera doesn't just smoothly cut between both anim objects. It actually migrates over the course of one frame, and it's very clear and obvious, and it does not look that good.
Oh,
And
it doesn't do like a jump cut.
yes,
It actually tries to
yes,
do a quick transition.
yes, like because all that's happening is that your player's camera is like getting locked to anim object A or B
Okay.
or whatever anim object, and it just is holding that bone's pose. So if you were to put an annotation in your animation that were to change which bone the anim object, the camera is connected to, then it changes the bone, but it does it over the course of one frame.
So you
And
actually have to watch that interpolation.
Yes, you watch that interpolation, and also because it's so quick, it does not look that good, and you will
Oh, that's a
always
bummer.
see it.
That's such a bummer.
So yes, so that means if you were to make cutscenes for mods, it would need to be one shot, like Kojima Metal Gear Solid 5 style things.
It's
You
funny.
know?
It's funny you mentioned that because that actually was the vibe I got from watching Dream. I was like, this feels like it feels so natural in the game, but it also made me think of Kojima stuff, which I loved MGS5. I thought it was phenomenal. And so like,
Yeah.
that like those I love all his cutscenes. I know he gets made fun of for going crazy with it. Like I hear in Death Stranding, it's like the first 40 minutes of the game is 30 minutes of cutscenes. And like I'm like, oh, that sounds perfect to me because I'm a huge fan of cutscenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That style of cinematography was actually the way that Kojima did the cutscenes inside the Metal Gear Solid 5 are actually it's still the kind of reference that I use when making all of my animated camera stuff because I just love the way that it looks. But back onto the topic of mods and stuff and
Yeah.
the cutscenes. Another problem too is that there isn't a good way to make the camera smoothly come back to the third person player camera position.
Interesting.
It does not seem like there's a good way to make it smoothly come back. And I think part of the problem for that is that when you use an annotation like end animated camera or end camera, I think there's a couple that probably do like the same thing. The camera doesn't just go back to the position where it's supposed to be. It kind of goes to the root bone, I think, and then jumps back up to the position where it's supposed to be on the third person camera. So that doesn't work too.
Yeah,
You know,
that one I think we could get over because I think we can use with some scripting we can do like fade to black, like quick fade to blacks to cover stuff like that up. The other one though, that would be really irritating having to watch the camera jumps, like having to do an interpolation because that would be very jarring every time.
mhm.
Do you know what happened? I wonder what happens if you, because the way you run these, like when you're doing your animations and actually recording, you use the play idle command, right? You just
Yes.
lyric it up as an idle. I wonder what would happen if you just triggered another idle with a script in the middle. Like if you just hit a certain point and you just play another idle, if it quickly if it just stops that one immediately and starts the next one, or does it just like try and interpolate between them, or does the game engine not let you until it finishes the first one?
It may work because uh, if you change the animation mid animation when the annotation to make the animated camera happen is already set, I think when you were to use play idle, it would just try to interpolate between the character's pose to the start pose of the next animation, uh, as it normally does, and it would hold the camera still connected to anim object A while it's doing that. So the camera wouldn't like fly to the root or fly anywhere else. It would just be still connected to anim object A while the character's pose transitions to the starting pose of the next animation. So it would still be a little bit choppy,
Yeah.
I think, but it wouldn't look too crazy, I don't think.
Interesting. That seems like worth an experiment. Just because I'm always I love seeing stuff you've done, but like put into the game as much as possible. And right now, there's nobody doing it as far as I can tell. I think it's like I've seen you and a couple of other people posting videos on YouTube where you guys are doing flashy stuff, but I haven't seen anybody trying to do it in game, which is a shame because I think the game really serves well from this. I think one of the things with Fallout 4 where they kind of went off the tone of previous Fallout games of you, because you actually have like a backstory. Like your character has a distinct backstory. Like this is a complaint about Fallout 4. I love it personally, but a lot of people don't like the fact that you already had a story and they feel like they're and a voice because you're forced to play one character. And I think because of that, it lends itself really well to having like cinematic moments in it. And like
Yeah. The sole survivor in Fallout 4, I guess he's kind of more like Geralt from The Witcher 3 in regards to he already has a backstory.
yeah,
And, like in all the other Fallout games, the backstory is pretty much just you were born in a vault,
right.
and then that's you, and you can figure everything out from there. Or in Fallout New Vegas, it's you're a courier and you were delivering a chip. That's all, and you can fill in everything you want for your own character from there, and it allowed players to be much more connected to those characters. So yeah, I fully understand why a lot of people don't like the predetermined backstory of the sole survivor in Fallout 4, but especially with some of the stuff that I've made, it's really allowed some nice cinematic story things to be possible in the game because it was a really good foundation to bounce off of.
I agree 100%. That's why your stuff captured my imagination of like this is what's possible with this new frame. Like I think it's a maybe something we don't want to see Bethesda doing every time. But like you think about games like The Witcher and Geralt, like we all love. Well, I think most people who like Bethesda games also love that game. It's just a solid RPG, and you don't hear people complaining about the fact that they don't get to rewrite Geralt's history. And I think it can work.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have to think about it's two separate things. This is an entry into the franchise. I'm personally glad that Bethesda did it this way. It's a lot of fun, and it's a nice way to look at like what could this franchise look like if it embodied that type of storytelling as opposed to the fully open-ended side. So I'm very happy with Fallout 4, as anybody knows with how much time I've invested in modding it. You obviously were really taken by the story because you've got all these you've now got I think 6 short films that you've done, and you said you have one more in you planned within the Fallout 4 engine before you try and experiment outside. So are you continuing down this path of expanding on kind of the lore building and stuff that Bethesda did and working on Fallout 4, or are you going to be taking it in different directions?
Kind of. And the last video that I'm going to make in Fallout 4's engine, it's going to be once again based upon the complete setting that Bethesda has already built for the game, and it's going to be based upon the Soul Survivor's backstory and the people whom he meets during his adventure throughout the entire game, stuff like that. In stuff that I were to make outside of Fallout 4, like in Unreal Engine, some of the ideas I've came up with do still go into the the Soul Survivors history. Like
Sure.
one of these videos that I thought of a long time ago that is something that in no way could I actually make in Fallout 4 was something like a flashback to the Soul Survivor during the war. Like just
Okay.
what about and just showing some of the encounters that he would have gone through fighting against the Chinese,
Yeah.
in the Fallout 4 lore. I think it would be very interesting to see, especially since it's a big chunk of the male soul survivor's backstory, which is very interesting.
Yeah. I like that you're using it. It seems like you're using your character throughout this, your custom take on Nate, because your guy looks way more gritty than the bland face Nate we get by default.
Yeah, a lot of people gave me flack earlier on with some of the videos that I've made, because I gave my character glasses because I wear glasses,
Sure.
and uh, over time, I tend to agree that, what, I don't think he actually looks that great with these glasses. So
Well,
at
you
the
ditched
end of
him.
Dream,
Yeah.
yes, at the end of Dream, I made him throw the glasses away because I wasn't intending on taking a 2 year break after Dream. I wanted to make more videos quickly right after I made Dream, and him throwing the glasses away was kind of like saying, hey guys, no more glasses. You happy now?
That's funny.
So, yeah.
That's so what made you take a 2 year break? Because that's a big gap, and it was really I think a lot of us were shocked when you reappeared with a new video. Then shortly after that, a tutorial, and then a Discord channel. I was like, oh, he's actually back. It seemed for a minute like you were just, because I believe in Dream, in the description, you voiced your frustration with how challenging it is to actually pull off your visions in Fallout 4, because there's just a lot of limitations that you've got to fight. So what is that? What made you take the break? Was just the frustration?
Well, I never stopped working on things since I made Dream.
Okay.
Right after I made Dream, I went to start working on a Minutemen video. And I worked on this Minutemen video for 4 months, and I got 3 minutes done. I was making every single shot in an animated camera. I chose some good music, I thought, to go along with it. I thought it fit very well. It was coming out very well. But I came to a problem while making it, where I came across a very big problem in Bethesda's story for the Minutemen, in the way that it just kind of, the Minutemen story just, it it proceeded too quickly towards the end, I think, because if I recall correctly, and I haven't played the Minutemen story in a very long time, but if I recall correctly, it was something like you defend the Minutemen base, the castle, from the Institutes, the Brotherhood of Steel, whomever tries to take you down. You defend that castle, and then right after that, you talk to Preston, and he says, "We know where the Institute is." It's very bizarre, and it did not really work too well in how I would try to make that an epic cinematic thing,
Right.
because I needed to have dialogue, but then all of the story after the castle wasn't really there, and it was just Preston saying, "We're gonna take the Institute."
Yeah.
So I couldn't figure out how I could actually extend the dialogue to fit the music, because I would have needed to cut the music down by like 30 seconds to make it fit, and that seemed like a bad, a bad creative choice. It wouldn't produce a satisfying end into the video, I thought.
Yeah.
So I told some of my friends at school and stuff, like, hey, I think I'm gonna put this video down for a second. Like, I'm gonna put it down. I'm gonna come back to it later. I'm gonna start working on a different video.
Okay.
And I came up with this idea for a Fallout 4 short film kind of thing. It was probably going to be like 12 or 11 minutes, and basically all that was going to happen. Well, it was something that was inspired by a scene I saw in this movie, and also from this book called The Road, where it's a post-apocalyptic setting, and the main character and his son come across a house. I don't remember much of the context, but they come across a house and they go into the like this basement cellar, and they find a bunch of terribly mutilated people, like arms cut off, legs cut off, and they're there to be kept alive so that the people who are above the house living in it can eat them and keep their meat fresh, so that they can always have fresh meat. So they're keeping them alive so that they could always have fresh meat, and it's a really creepy scene.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, what if I could, like Fallout 4 doesn't really have cannibals. What if I could make a video where there's cannibals in the game?
Yeah.
So I came up with this idea, like the sole survivor comes across a dead guy by his settlement. Say it was a settlement with a man and a woman, and the man is left there, and he's like terribly killed. He's missing an arm, he's dead, he has a wedding ring, and the sole survivor sees some footsteps and blood drops leading off into the distance. So then he says, I'm going to follow that. So then he follows that, and eventually he finds an entrance to a bunker, and he goes down into the bunker and searches down and finds a whole bunch of people locked down there. Like I explained from the road scene, they're cut up.
Yeah.
I made some models in Outfit Studio, trying to make stuff the best way I could, where it was supposed to be a lot of people there who had arms missing, legs missing, things like that. And then the sole survivor would make it his mission there to kill all of the cannibals here and get these guys out of here.
Yeah.
And I got about 8 minutes done in the video, but it took such a long time because I was doing motion capture for this. Like I got my hands on a motion capture suit, the perception, yes, the perception neuron.
Okay.
And it's a okay suit. It's old now. It doesn't work as well as it used to, but I used it to make a lot of motion capture for this video, and every single shot was motion capture. Motion capture is still a lot faster than hand animating everything, and it does look a lot better.
Sure.
But the big problem was that this video was unique to me because I couldn't properly see where the end was going to be. I couldn't find out how long it was going to take me to finish stuff, and it was taking a lot longer than I thought it would. I thought it would take me like 4 months.
Okay.
I worked on it for over a year, and just over time, I lost my passion for that video.
Sure.
I didn't want to work on it anymore. I just wanted to stop and move to something else. And I was already feeling, bad for my subscribers. Like, I'm spending all this time working on this thing, and I don't even think it's that good anymore. And then I'm just taking all this time. What should I do, man? So then I dropped that video too, but then I also then go to start working on another video, which was actually something that I started making for this editing class that I was taking inside of college.
Okay.
First year of college. So my professor wanted just a video that could show your editing, and smart me thinks to myself, well, I don't want to work with anyone. I'm just gonna make something on my own inside of Fallout 4 because that's what I know how to do.
Yeah.
So over the course of a month, I worked the hardest I've ever worked on stuff, like since I worked on Dream. I hadn't worked on something this hard in a long time. I was working every day through the night, 5 or 6 hours a day, getting the motion capture done, getting all this stuff done. Worked on it for a month. I got 2 minutes and 30 seconds done.
Okay.
I didn't finish it, but my teacher still gave me an A because he thought it was really cool. But I ended up dropping that one too, once again, because I thought it wasn't really that entertaining, and I couldn't figure out these ragstag animations because I was trying to make animations for the ragstags, and it wasn't really working over that well. So
Interesting.
then after that, one day I was listening to some tunes, some music, and I found this cool song, and I was just listening to it, and I was imagining all of the footage from the things I worked over the past 2 years. Just what if they were all intercutting together and it looked all cool and epic, and I thought, oh, what if I make that? So I made that in like 3 weeks, and then I put it up for like one day, and then I took it down because because people were saying that they thought it ended abruptly.
Uh-huh.
So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna make a intro and end. So I made the intro and end, and I put it back up.
And that's what
Uh,
became Lost Souls, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it's actually called Lost Souls because just replace souls with videos,
Sure.
lost videos.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all.
So now it sounds
There's
like
actually
I was gonna say it sounds like that first one you kind of got burned out and you lost your passion because you were fighting technical issues and trying to figure out how to do all this stuff
uh, for the
for the cannibal stuff. Like it
cannibal
sounds like
video. Yes.
a lot of it was just
Yeah.
figuring out how can I pull this off, like figuring out how
Well,
to make the bodies without like with half
yeah.
arm missing arms or
Well,
whatever.
well, I figured out the model stuff pretty well because Outfit Studio is pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
The biggest problem was that I was losing my passion to work on this. I thought that some of the shots weren't coming out good. Some things weren't looking up to the standard that I would have liked them to be. And I was thinking more and more over the actual layout of this video, and I was thinking, I don't think this is really that good. It could be so much better. I should have planned this out a lot more. So that was also part of my motivation to drop it. It wasn't necessarily technical problems, although there were some technical problems. The main reason why I dropped it was uh, I was just tired of it, and I thought it didn't look that good.
Sure. So do you do any type of and maybe this is something that video will teach you a lesson in. Do you do any storyboarding or anything to try and get an idea of where you're headed with these things, or do you like write up a synopsis of what you want the shots to look
I
like?
do, yeah, I do that now.
Okay.
I used to not do it. I didn't. I literally didn't write anything down for Dream. I just all had it in my head, and I just made it from there. Didn't write anything down for the Minutemen video that I started making either. I wrote some stuff down for this cannibal video, but it was just brief sentences explaining what I would be doing for the motion capture and stuff like that.
Sure.
For this last video in Fallout 4 that I'm doing much more planning, and I think it's very useful. Like I'm planning out the editing, seeing how long each shot would be.
Yeah.
Like I went into Sony Vegas and I have like the first 30 seconds recorded already for this thing, and I made text boxes just explaining shot of PC doing blank blank blank, and that goes for like 12 seconds, and then another box explaining what's going on, and another box, and another box, and I'm basically planning out each shot, where it's going to be, and how long it's going to be there, so that I can make sure that I do this right,
Yeah.
because I don't want to make another mistake again.
You don't want to find yourself a year later and then you're just not feeling it. Like
Yep.
yeah, one of the things that's nice about doing stuff like that, of breaking down the work into those little chunks, because I've done a lot of study on film. That was something I was going to go into at some point in my life, and like I always thought the storyboarding process was very weird. I was like, that seems to take all the fun out of it, but in reality, it's just making sure it's breaking down the work into digestible chunks, so that once you get moving, you can plow through it more easily without getting without second guessing yourself and constantly getting lost in the weeds like that. Like I think that feeling you had of just like this isn't funny, I think that happens naturally in a project that goes that long. And so like doing something like storyboarding helps you to not get stuck in that, because then you just like can be focused on okay, today I'm just going to get this 12-second shot done, and like rather than thinking about it the whole big picture, which can be overwhelming.
Yeah. I'm all up for storyboarding except for drawing the shots, because that's what people do during that. Because I know what to imagine
Right.
when I'm gonna put the camera. I can literally just write something as simple as PC sits up and camera is over his shoulder looking at X. And then
Right.
that's all I need to know what I'm going to do. But, obviously a real director needs to, draw out each shot detailed so that, other people can look at that and know exactly what they need to do. But hey, because I'm working alone, I don't need to do that.
Right. So you don't have to work on your drawing skills.
Mhm.
Do you have any sort of art background before you got into this?
No. Uh, I had edited this one video a long time ago. Uh, like in 2013, I was excited for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One to come out,
Hmm.
and I just took a bunch of trailer clips and I put them together in a video, and I took some music and I put it over, and it was just like a bunch of the next generation games now. Like, whoa, this is so cool. That was all that I made before,
Yeah.
but some of that knowledge went into me starting off with the Fallout 4 stuff.
And it's you chose a tough one to get started with because there's a lot easier ways to build to do animation and machinima type stuff than Fallout, because Fallout 4 can seem to fight you, like you mentioned, that there's a lot of variables that are flying around, a lot of dynamic systems that are happening that you lose control of, and it can cause you to have to start over again quite a bit, I'm sure, in doing your shots. So I'm obviously, as a Fallout 4 fan, I'm very happy that you stuck through it. But man, what a tough one to bite off as your first training session.
Yeah, there's so much dumb problems that come across when recording stuff. Like, for example, for some reason, sometimes the character just disappears when I do the camera.
Okay.
Like, for example, I did a shot recently, which is actually in the new uh like image for the Discord server that I have, where it was the PC walking with dog meat, and they're just walking away towards this thing that you can't actually see. But uh, dog meat for some reason disappeared. Like, he got cold out because for some reason with the FOV and the camera, he just got cold out because the camera thought I wouldn't see him or something like that. So I had to re-record this shot a couple times because dog meat kept disappearing. And there's also dumb problems like when you zoom in the FOV, you have a much clearer view of the background
Yeah.
and the LOD, and it's like flickering and it doesn't look good at all. So
Oh
then
yeah.
I gotta try to like trim the footage so that you can't actually see that. That's another problem that's very annoying.
Yeah.
Also, one thing too, when I was making this cannibal video, I made some custom uh what are they called? Like the lip files
Yeah.
with the automatic mouth yeah, movement.
Right.
It wasn't that I was trying to make custom dialogue. Well, there was a couple of that, but I wanted characters to actually not look stone faced when they were getting punched in the face or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but some weird problem there because I made a custom ESP to try and make that work. And for some reason, just the dialogue clips, or, the game treats it like dialogue, they were just going off randomly. Like, my character was saying these dialogue clips, even though the dialogue wasn't even assigned to his character.
Right. Right.
It was really weird. I don't understand how that was happening. And it was just happening all the time when I had that ESP installed. But yeah, those are just a few things. The game, every single time I record stuff in it, something goes weird and I need to record, uh, at least a few shots to try and get the perfect take.
Well, I will say, I know you like to work alone, but that's the sort of thing that some of us in the mod community could help you with. So if you ever need help resolving some issues like that, like LOD flicker, I'm positive that's something people could fix. The lip thing, and making them say only when you want them to, I can show you how to fix that. Like, feel free to reach out anytime, because I would love to see more of your videos come out. And so if there's technical limitations that those of us who have seen your stuff and love it can help with, we would be happy to do so. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that.
Well, fortunately for this last Fallout 4 video, I don't think I'm going to be making any custom lip files or anything like that.
Well, that type of stuff. There's a lot of those limitations where you can kind of hack your way through them, because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do mod wise, especially once you're breaking free of, like, you don't need to worry about performance and things, because you just need it to work for one shot. So we can do some things that wouldn't be acceptable for an actual mod to release, but would be totally plausible to do for this. Or, for example, you could set an eye setting to increase the draw distance dramatically, because I'm sure you have a decent enough rig that could render it, and then you're not releasing that out into the wilds as a mod, so it doesn't matter if you overdo it, or even disabling the LOD in a scene where it's causing problems. There's a lot you could do to get past some of those limitations if you ever need assistance.
Well, some of those problems too I can just solve with the console commands. Like with performance, usually I get around 20 or 30 FPS in some of the city areas,
sure,
or the really dense areas. But I'm able to get it to 60 FPS by just recording the game in slow motion. So I've recorded at 1/4 the speed by using the set game time multiplier command. I think that's what it stands for.
Yeah.
And I just set it to 0.25, and then I record it, and then I speed it up by 4 in Sony Vegas so that it looks normal speed, and that's how I'm able to get the high FPS and stuff.
Oh, that's really
well.
Yeah, that's very clever.
Yeah.
You slow, so you can then your game rig has 4 times the amount of time to process whatever's going on. That's interesting. Does that make it more difficult for you while you're watching it and recording it to visualize exactly what's going on? Like, does that force you then to think about things a little bit differently when you're recording, or have you just gotten accustomed to it and you can see it in your head already in full speed?
Well, I already know how the animation is supposed to play out, because I play it at no speed change at first to make sure that it looks normal, I guess. And also I know how it's supposed to look from 3ds Max, but it's actually more beneficial, I think, to watch the animation in slow motion, because you can much more clearly see mistakes that are happening.
Sure.
So say a character is supposed to grab another character's arm in normal speed, you may not notice that his hand goes through the guy's arm by 3 inches.
Right.
But in slow motion you can catch that a lot easier. And actually helps me to make sure things work better.
Yeah. Do you take the time to fix all that stuff too? Like, are you a perfectionist enough to go back and be like, oh, that's clipping too much, I'm going to go back and fix this animation, re-export
Yeah.
it?
If I can't fix it just with position changes or things like that, I would just go back into 3ds Max and fix it and export it again, and I would try it again, and that would take 3 minutes. It's not too much work to fix small problems like that.
Very cool. So that makes me think then, so you've figured out the paired animation system to pull off some of those combo things where one person's grabbing another.
Not really.
Okay.
I did that in a very simple way.
Okay.
So I just open the console commands, and I click on both of my actors, and I play their animations at exactly the same time.
Okay.
And that their animations are already made to perfectly work with each other.
Yeah.
But to make sure that they're in the exact correct position where they're going to actually interact with each other, I put their root bone exactly in the same spot, and I turn off collision so that they don't repel each other.
Interesting. Yeah, that's one of those things I think a lot of people would love to see more of, is more of the the kill animations of the 2 characters linking in together, because there's been a lot of mods now that have made it so that you can do those animations regardless of whether you should normally be able to, because a lot of those animations that are in the game only ever get used by the NPCs, and so I've seen some where the player gets to use them, and I don't know if anybody has figured out how to add new paired animations, or maybe it's not even that complicated and it's just no one's bothered to try because we don't have a lot of animators in the community doing character animation, but that would be a piece of information I think people would love to see.
Yeah, it's probably possible to make new paired takedown animations, but there's probably not going to be anyone coming up who would ever do that. I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I don't think well, that's what I'm curious about, is something. So when you started the animation support channel and you put out that first tutorial, I'm just curious if we have anybody who's a huge fan of Fallout 4, looking for a new side project, who maybe has a background in animation, who's just hasn't bothered to get into it because it's such a massive learning curve for to get into it, and you've really simplified that with that first tutorial you put out.
Mm-hmm. There's been 2 or 3 people who have showed up in my Discord server who regularly ask questions about Fallout 4 animation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's about how much I expected to show up, even though in the comments of a lot of my videos, I see people, like at least a few dozen, like on Dream, for example,
Yeah.
saying things like, "How did you do this? I want to do this on my own," and then I make a tutorial and those guys don't show up. So,
well, like you had, like we talked about at the beginning, like the amount of dedication required to pull off a good-looking thing. Not a lot of people have that in them. There's not a lot of people who will commit to things, especially things that don't necessarily have a guaranteed payoff. Like a lot of people are, might put that in for something they know they can make money on, but might not do it just for a passion project. So I think it's going to be a rare number of people. We already call in the modding community, we consider you animators unicorns, because there's so few people who want to do it, because it's a lot of work. It requires a lot of commitment especially to make it look good.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the only character animators there, I think, is just me and some of the people on my Discord. Everyone else is first-person animators,
right?
Which is a really big shame, because first-person animations are pretty much only used for weapons,
right?
And especially with really big mods, and they need third-person animations, they're not going to get that from anyone.
Yeah. It is a real shame.
I was working
especially for all the big quest mods out there, because those moments where there's those independent animations, and I've seen you've made heavy use of like some of the animations that were in there, like the I think I've seen you use some of like Kellogg's animations from his dream sequences, but like stuff like that, like those animations are just stand out so much when you're playing through that you need those to really make your story stand out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for example, when I was working with Fallout 4 New Vegas, it was only about 4 animators, and 2 of them weren't active at all. So I was the lead animator there, and I was basically just leading myself and one guy who barely did anything.
Yeah.
So I was thinking the whole time when I was working with those guys that I'm the only the only third-person animator here. If they need a third-person animation, it can only be me who can make it. Yeah. And, that's just not a good system. We need more people. But unfortunately, I think that there's not a lot of people who are interested in doing third-person animations.
Yeah, I think. Well, hopefully we'll find some more. Hopefully we can keep pushing this. As the information gets easier, you'll draw in more people to actually give it a try. And if you think about your own story, is you came in with very little experience in animation at all, and were able to excel at it. So I'm sure there are other people out there who are like that. We just got to give them the pathway to get there. And like I said, I think your tutorial is a good help. I think the Rizzler's series of tutorials for weapons are a good help. I'm going to start putting out some tutorials for some of the more mechanical things. I'm not an animator, so I don't aim to be, as because I've got enough skill sets under my belt. And the animation is something I think requires a certain natural talent toward, which I don't believe I have. But I think as we get more information and we streamline it, I think we might start drawing in a few more people. But I think your experience with Fallout 4 New Vegas is very common on these big mod teams, is it tends to be that there will be one lead person who does the bulk of the work in any individual department, and then a lot of people who will sign on to help out and may or may not actually do so. I think I've been modding different games for over 20 years now, and it's always been like that every time I've gotten involved with big projects. It's a handful of people who do the lion's share of the work.
I was in Fallout 4 New Vegas for about a year, and I left because, well, I just didn't have a good feeling about the project. I had a bad feeling. I just didn't think it was going to be finished. And I remember looking at all the people there. We had over 100 people, like maybe 130 when I left. Most of them were 3D modelers. There was probably like 50 3D modelers.
Wow.
Most of them weren't doing anything, which just seemed really, it just didn't seem like a good system. There should be better, uh, hiring, so to say. Although they're not hired, but
Right.
they're they need to use their resources better, and I just felt like there wasn't much organization in regards to all the work that people were doing. It just seemed all over the place.
Yeah, again, it's a common tale. That's why you see such long pipelines on these big mod projects throughout Bethesda's gaming history, and how few of them actually end up getting released. Is that managing volunteers is its own skill set that not a lot of people have. I'm trying to learn it. It's very hard. Like trying to keep everybody motivated and organized when you have no money involved, and filtering through, because when people come up and offer you their services, you tend to want to just say yes. Like you look at their portfolio and be like, yeah, that's great, not knowing that it's then going to require a certain effort and whatnot to get them actually producing for you. And some people they just want to be a part and just to say that they're a part, whether or not they actually deliver. So it's a whole other skill set. And so I think that feeling you have, I think a lot of people experience that when they join these mod teams. It looks like nothing's ever going to happen. And it's definitely on the backs of a few people in leadership to get the majority of it done. I don't know what the solution to that is. I feel like in general, as a working stiff, I feel like that's just a problem we have in the world. Is there are so few people who are good at managing others. It's just a problem of humanity. We have people everybody sucks at leadership, and so you just see it in small projects just as well as you will in a lot of companies.
Yeah, the main impression that I got was just that there is a secret to leading all these people, and I just have no idea what the secret is. Because I think about, really big movies and really big games where there's hundreds of people working every single day on this stuff, and they're all being directed and they're all working on what they're supposed to do. And it's like, say, imagine a game like Death Stranding,
Yeah.
It's really confusing. I would imagine that a lot of the people working on the game were really confused, but they were able to continue working on it because the director, Kojima, was able to tell them what to do well enough that they could actually do it, And that's a really big challenge. I don't know how people can actually do that properly, because you have a vision in your head, and I can't imagine how you can possibly transport that vision exactly how it's supposed to be into someone else's head and have them work on it the way that you want them to. It just seems impossible, but somehow people do it.
Well, I think that's why we have so few. Like, it's so rare that you get like an amazing movie or an amazing game. Is that you get a lot of mediocrity, because I think it's very difficult. I think it's a very difficult skill set to pick up. I think there's just a handful of people who can pull it off. And not only do you have to have that skill set to pull that off, but then you have to be surrounded by the right people. Because even if you have the skill set, if you have a lot of people that aren't motivated, or you have people who don't have the skills to pull off your vision, then it's not going to happen either. So it's kind of like the perfect storm has to hit for stuff like that to occur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say that in regards to the leading these big people who lead these big projects, I've heard this a lot, especially in regards to some of the Fallout. Well, not in regards to some of the Fallout 4 big mods, but just I heard from a lot of other people too that this is a big problem. People don't know what to do, and a lot of these mods, especially I think of Skywind. You know that mod?
Oh yeah.
For Skyrim, that one's probably been. I don't know how long they've been working on that. Like 7 years.
Right. I think since the day after Skyrim came out.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, making a game through a Discord or through online means and not meeting face to face and not working in the studio every day, it does not work that well, And it's a big shame because it stops a lot of really, things that would be fun to play. They just can't really be built, or may not be able to be built properly. because people are trying to do it, like a community effort. It doesn't really work that well at all.
Well, I'm sure the big publishers are happy about that. Otherwise, they would get decimated by fan projects because we give them all away for
Yeah,
free.
maybe.
But yeah, it is a shame. I mean, and that's something. If us programmers, a lot of us are taught agile development, and one of the principles of agile development is that the best way to solve problems is to meet in person. And like, yeah, that's a huge limiting factor with these community projects because they're all online. Obviously, you have a lot of tools at our disposal. Like people could do webcams and screen shares and stuff, but very very rarely do people actually do that. And then it's still not the same when there's no skin in the game. So like the fact that when people do this as a career, they've got skin in the game. They have no choice. If they fail to deliver and they're part of the project, if they drop the ball on it, they're not going to eat. They're going to get canned. And so like that's a big motivator, and you don't have that in these volunteer projects. It's literally just everybody has to be riled up on passion. And as you've seen, even in your own projects, even in your own run, you can burn through that candle real fast. You go spend 4 or 5 months and then you just don't feel it anymore. Like now you scale that up with a bunch of different people, and now every one of them can lose their inspiration for somebody else's vision. You can see how it's a tall order to pull off stuff like that.
Yeah. I thought of this often, but, say I were to be working on the stuff that I do now, but it were to be a job,
Yeah.
Not like I was working for, like, making something else, but imagine, that I have a job and I'm just working on these Fallout 4 videos, and I'm doing it in an office and I can't stop working until a certain amount of time, then I go home. I would think that I would be working a lot more productively, because when you're working on your own time, you always slack off. You always take too long breaks, because it's, your own time. When people are making these big mods or fan projects or just little things that they're working on, it usually always comes out slower, because just a lot of people just want to, have a fun amount of time, or just not become bored while doing things.
Well, I can tell you as a person who's worked in offices, it's the same thing happens there. Everybody slacks off at work too. So,
oh man.
But you have a better chance. I think you have a better chance of creating an environment where people will actually work on stuff when they're in person and there's camaraderie, and you can, if you get the right. But this is that finding the right mix of people, because if you have enough slackers in a group, you'll drive down the motivation of the producers, and vice versa. If you have enough good producers, they'll motivate each other, and you'll see, you get to see each other's progress in person. You wander around the office, you see somebody doing something really cool. Like that's definitely inspiring, and will get you to go back to your desk and focus more. But you still end up doing, everybody finds reasons to slack. But I think you're right though, is that the in-person, the having everybody gather around it and work on it as a project that actually has importance to it and is required of them to finish, I think definitely obviously is going to produce a better product than these community things. Even though one of the complaints about doing it in that, like in the AAA space, is that you lose a lot of developer passion, because you end up with people getting stuck with kind of the new employees get stuck with like the crappy work that's very grindy and boring, and you have to cater to corporate interests, and like there are a lot of negatives, but I think there's also a lot of positives of being able to do that as a focused career.
Like with game developers, they have a deadline. They got to finish their game by a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So they would be working and always having it in their head that they need to finish this so that they can get the game out by whatever date. But it's a negative in the way that a lot of people will be overworked.
Right.
But then it is a positive in the way that there will be a lot of people who would be working really, really productively.
Yeah.
They would be working to try to get this thing out, and they would get it out faster, even though it may not come out in the best shape.
Right.
But with these community projects, they're all working on all the people are working on their own time.
Yeah.
They don't know when the game's going to come out. They're pretty much just going by the idea that it'll be done when it's done.
Yeah.
And that could take years to come, maybe even 7 years, like we've already seen.
Right. that is one of the only reasons that our team on Sim Development is able to produce as much as we do, is that I work with deadlines, is that I will give myself strict deadlines to pull things off. I try and bring in as many people who are willing to work with deadlines under that umbrella as well. And so we've been able to pull off multiple expansion packs in a relatively short amount of time. And I think that that's something that I think all volunteer projects need to embrace, is the deadline. And then if you have people who can't stick up to can't keep up with the deadlines, they'll exit the project, and then you'll be left with a lean and mean team that can actually complete stuff and get it out the door. That to me, that's the only secret sauce that I've discovered. There's still a lot of problems with managing groups of volunteers that I have no idea what the solution is. With the sharing the vision, that's definitely something that's difficult, and I think that's a skill we all need to get. Anybody who wants to be the lead on a creator needs to get better at, and can always improve on. And like you said, like right now you're working solo, you can just write yourself little text bits. But I think, anybody working on a squad, like then if you want to do film, for example, or animation type of stuff, you definitely have to get into the storyboarding, because that's usually much easier to tell a story to others and share your vision visually than it is with words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People gotta whip out the massive 1,000-page document so that they can get the thing done.
Yeah, well, that was a conversation that we had on my team recently, is that somebody asked me to do proper design documentation, and I'm like, oh my God, I've done that for corporate projects, and it's like hundreds of pages of text and lots of images and slideshows. Like, I don't have time for that. But yeah, and like I don't think a lot of people have time to digest it, but that's not actually what they meant. But anyway, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is excuse me, something that I've heard a lot. Well, I know that it's something that goes down with really big games and movies. They make this massive design document before they even start making the game, because they do a lot of good pre-production. Mm-hmm. They make this massive document that has everything that they're going to need to do, or at least I assume it's going to have every single thing really detailed, step by step. Well, not step by step, but really detailed. A lot of information on how they're going to do things, how they're going to do it in the way that the director wants them to do it. And I would imagine that in a scenario like that, a lot of people could just refer to this massive document to figure out what they're going to do, instead of actually, needing to go and get up and talk to their boss, like, what the heck am I supposed to do? No, they just gotta look at this document and figure out, oh, we need a walking animation for the cow or something. And then they just do it.
Yeah, definitely having detailed design documentation is definitely helpful when trying to manage a big team, and like whatever form that comes in. I think now a lot of people use web versions of it as opposed to actual physical document, but the idea is the same, as you're detailing out as much as you can. I think a lot of people have moved over now toward more agile type development, where it's more you're focused on more instilling the theme to everybody, and like what is our goal of our game, what are we trying to make players feel, just because if you get too in the weeds on these specifics, then you lose your ability to adapt and change later on. If you find out, that something's not working, or as you're exploring the gameplay, you're like, okay, this is a better direction for us to go in. But yeah, any type of stuff you can get everybody on the same page is definitely conducive to better workflow. But from what I've heard on a lot of mod teams, and I've gone through this myself, is that a lot of times you will overhaul development in a big bad way at various times. Maybe the management shifts, or you just like take a total different direction in the story, and so a lot of that I think inhibits them even bothering to create said documentation.
Yeah, like, it's one thing that I thought about often when I was working on Fallout 4 New Vegas, that this could be a lot smoother if we had proper documentation, like if we actually had a design document. And because there was no design document.
That's a project that seems like it could benefit from one, because what the end product is, right? Like what are the main sequences we want to hit from New Vegas, and like you're rebuilding something, so the final vision's already out there for you to reference.
Yeah. Now, I think that's what a lot of people were originally thinking, like, oh, maybe we don't need to make a design document because we have the whole game right here.
Right.
Just refer to it. But when it comes down to people's individual tasks, it was just
Yeah.
the leads telling them what to do, each person what to do at, when they're told to do it. There wouldn't be a scenario where a person would just uh, start working on an asset and get it into the game and have it not be discussed at all. I think there still needs to be a design document for projects like that because uh, even though they already have an idea of what they're going to make, they need a better idea through the design document so that people can actually be working correctly and making what they need to make.
Yeah, there are tons of books on this because it's such an important topic and such a deep topic too. What are the benefits and different ways you can approach like documenting processes or documenting a project before you really get moving on it. But yeah, I could definitely see some benefit from that. Like I keep getting these ads on YouTube for something called Monday.com. And it seems like it would be perfect for something like a project like that, like any of these remake mods, whether it be Skywind or Sky Oblivion or FL4 New Vegas, of where it's just like a grid of here's all the projects that need to be done. They're assigned to you. You check them off, they turn green, and you can just see this giant grid of all the projects that need to be done. That something like that could be really cool to give people a visual perspective of like how progress is going. That's another little silly thing about humans too, is that like we respond so well to little visual stuff. Is that something like that, like having like a visual map of where you're at a project, that like something like that might be enough to keep those teams rolling faster, because then everybody would be able to see at a glance like what percent complete they were toward actually having the thing done. Because that's another one that you can get burnt out on working on these projects. And I mean, you've even done it in your solo projects, is where you have trouble seeing the end. You have trouble seeing like how much more work is there still, where it can be demoralizing.
Yeah, like I would imagine that a person's motivation would be so much higher if they could finish their shift on like a game project or something, and then they could just see we are 0.6% closer to finishing.
Yeah.
And people can just see that every single day, little by little. And I
Yeah.
would imagine that would be really good for motivation. But of course, that's just a dream. Probably wouldn't actually work out that well.
Yeah, you gamify the creation of games. That makes sense, because think about how motivating an XP bar is in a game. Like even if you have to grind millions of experience in a game late level, you still see that little bit of progress on that bar, and it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That could be a cool tool to build. All right, so we got way lost in the weeds here talking about this stuff, but it's an interesting topic though, because it's such a there's, like you said, there's so many amazing projects that can only exist in the fan space because there's just not enough. There's not going to be any money in them. That it would be amazing to get to play, but we need to see, better managed projects in order to see them come to light. But let's get back to animation. So you mentioned that you've got a mocap suit. Now
Yes, I do.
What is that like for somebody? So like anybody, so I think that can turn somebody who's maybe not an animator into an animator in a sense, because it gives you a lot of power to get good looking animations. What is involved in something like that? Because to me that sounds so unreachable, but now you're telling me you're a kid in his first year of college and you're rocking a mocap suit. That's got to be motivational to anybody who's thinking about getting into this to hear. Could you what does that cost? Did you rent it? Did you find it used for sale? How hard is it to rig that up? How hard is it to get that information into the game? Like, give somebody who got hopeful hearing that some info maybe. Like, how could they get into a similar position you're in?
Well, sure. Fortunately, the motion capture suit I got was the cheapest one on the market.
Okay.
Or at least I think it's the cheapest. Well, no, the cheapest is actually using Xbox Connects, and those are really bad. It doesn't it doesn't capture your movement that well. But I got the Perception Neuron for $1,000.
Okay.
And it was actually mostly paid for with some of my YouTube money, I think.
Nice.
And it was the cheapest version that I could get, because the other version available was $1,500, and that one came with sensors for your fingers,
Oh,
which sounds interesting, but I don't think could really be that beneficial.
Okay.
Because, especially when you think about a lot of games nowadays, I noticed the animations in games cutscenes today, and I'm very darn sure that they do not mocap their fingers, so that's not necessary. But unfortunately, now the suit that I got, they're still selling it, but they don't sell the 1,000. The $1,000 version again.
Okay.
So all of the perception neuron suits all have the finger sensors,
Sure.
which is bad. But for getting the animations onto my Fallout 4 character, I used a thing inside a 3ds Max called the Biped Rig, and there's a Biped Rig for the Fallout 4 skeleton on the Nexus,
Yeah.
and the Biped Rig is very unique. It's different from the cat rig. This rig actually, to me, almost seems like it was made to work with motion capture.
Okay.
Probably not, but it just kind of seems that way. And the cool thing about the Biped Rig is that you can export your motion capture from the program that came with the perception neuron. It's called Axis Neuron. You can edit the capture that you got inside of that program, and I can export it with the bone names to be compatible with the 3ds Max Biped.
Okay.
So that means I don't need to do any retargeting. So I can get from there I can get the motion capture in the motion builder, and I can smooth out some of the shakiness of the motion capture because it doesn't come out all that clean.
Sure.
And then I can load it onto a generic 3ds Max biped and save the motion capture animation on that as a BIP file, in which then that BIP file can be loaded onto any 3ds Max biped rig, no matter the shape or proportions of the character.
Interesting.
And that works very well for me because it makes things really simple.
Yeah.
For getting the stuff on.
So it's definitely not a small investment. So like I think a lot of people heard $1,000 and they're like, oh Jesus, okay, because like that's for a lot of people that's not accessible. Obviously, you were fortunate. You had a nice viral video happen, so you're able to generate a good amount of ad revenue. But like I mean, I think if anybody who wants to take animation seriously, you're definitely gonna have to invest some money because you're talking about there's probably software you're gonna need. Obviously, 3D Studio Max is a very expensive piece of software, though I would recommend everybody you'd be better off than buying 3ds Max is go sign up for a class so that you're technically a student and get a student license for it because that's either free from your college or virtual. I don't know if they have a complete free version from Autodesk, but it's darn cheap. And there's also obviously illicit ways you can acquire 3D Studio Max, but there's definitely investments if you want to get into animating proper. But I think the Mocap Suit is one of those ones where you can't avoid the cost because it's physical good. Like unless you're willing to go, have something fall off the back of a truck, air quotes, like you're gonna have to invest a little cash to get something like that.
Yeah, the best motion capture suits that you can own, as one person.
Yeah,
I think they're like $10,000.
Whoa!
But the capture from them is so good that it's just something that you can dream about having but never actually get.
Right.
Because it's so darn expensive.
But you probably don't have to do a lot of that motion smoothing and stuff that'll capture it more.
Yeah,
correctly.
It comes out so much better.
Yeah.
Although that you can smooth, the jitters out of your motion capture very well inside of a motion builder, your animation kind of comes out looking smooth, like it's almost floating a little bit. Like you lose some of the weight that your character may have had when you apply those filters. So in animations and really expensive games out there, the motion capture is perfect. It looks so good, and it's just one of those, I guess, animators' wet dream that they think about. Oh, what if we could have that?
Yeah.
But no, you can't have it.
So basically, so from your perspective, though, you think that the neuron suit you have just gives you a good baseline, right? It speeds up the process of getting like the general motions locked down, and then you can just do your hand tweaks to get it looking more natural.
Yeah, most of the tweaks that I make are fixing the pose, because the pose comes out from the motion capture suit. It comes out all wrong, like 90% of the time. So, for example, I mean that for some reason, when I get the motion capture onto, exported, the shoulder may be permanently rotated down like 30 degrees, and I gotta put it back up in its correct spot. Maybe the forearm is rotated to the right 15 degrees, and that's not correct. Or
Okay.
or the legs are uh, bent by like 10 degrees, so that it kind of looks like your character is like deliberately bending their knees for some reason, like they're thinking about crouching, but they're not actually doing it.
Yeah.
And there's some other annoying stuff too, like the pelvis for some reason is rotated forward like 30 degrees, and it, yeah, like 30 degrees, and it kind of looks like he's pushing his crotch out for some reason, and you gotta fix that too.
That's such a funny
Yeah, there's a
visual.
lot of weird stuff.
So now,
But
when you have to fix that stuff, do you have to go keyframe by keyframe and fix that, or is it just kind of like if you fix it once in the animation, you can apply that change across the board?
yeah, so I fix it on the Biped Rig before I move the animation over to the Cat Rig.
Gotcha. Okay.
And uh, I can add an animation layer onto the Biped Rig, and I can also do that on the Cat Rig if I want, but I do it on the Biped Rig, and from there I can fix the animation, adjust the arms, the legs, the pelvis, the head. The head gets really messed up too. His neck's like broken 90% of the time, but I can fix it all there to make sure that the animation is nice and correct looking before I move it over.
Sure.
So it's it's a it's something that you got to do only in the case when your capture is trash. I would imagine that for really high quality motion capture, you don't need to do much of that
Right.
at all. You know,
Well, I think
but
that's where the investment ends up being worthwhile, and that's why you're going to see a lot of this stuff limited to these high-end game companies. For now, though, I think that there's going to be strides made to make this more accessible universally. Like that, I've seen there's a project to take advantage of the Steam VR sensors that you can attach them to your limbs and capture through the VR system. I've seen a project working on that because those are relatively cheap compared to those $10,000 mocap suits. So I know there's a lot of technology being worked on to reduce the price on all this.
hmm yeah, but I still don't think it would be a well. You know that the price of technology, like nowadays, rapidly declines like a really quickly.
Yeah.
You know, like something 2 years ago cost like $500, but now it costs $200.
Right.
It's really good
Yeah.
in a way, but you know, if you want to have affordable motion capture that with the stuff right now you may think it's too expensive, you're going to need to wait a few years because it's not coming anytime soon.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's just in the long term, I think we'll see it get cheaper and cheaper. We're also starting to see animation libraries emerge. One of the ones that's caught my eye is Mixamo because Adobe bought them, and so they've just included it with part of Creative Cloud, where you've got some standard animations you can use. Obviously, they're not going to work for specialized sequences like the stuff you're doing, but for people just trying to get some basic common things worked out, is like that can end up being a source. And then there's also one of the things that I'm really excited about right now is applying machine learning to animation. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming in that might just bypass the need for all this hardware and stuff.
hmm I know about Mixamo. It's a really cool website. It has a lot of these animations, and you can just load in a character skeleton, and it would do this auto rigging feature where it makes sure that the animations on the website will be correctly retargeted onto your character's skeleton. I've used it before, and it's actually very useful for some of the stuff that I do. You know, like if there's some motion capture that I can't record, like jumping over a really big opening or something. I can't do the motion capture
Right.
for that because I don't have enough space.
Okay.
But
You're
I
you're
can
not a stunt
actually,
man. You're not gonna go set
yeah,
yourself
no,
up.
but I can actually upload the generic Biped Rig to that website, and then I can download the animations for the Biped Rig, and then import the animations directly onto the Biped Rig into 3ds Max, and then save the animation as a BIP file, like I said before, and then I can load that Mixamo animation onto, once again, any biped character. So I can actually put it onto my Fallout 4 characters very easily, and then from the biped rig, I can actually use a thing called the motion mixer,
Uh-huh.
which is like a video editor but for animations, and I can actually merge all of these Mixamo animations into a long sequence.
That's
I would
amazing.
probably, yeah, I would probably want to show that off in this advanced tutorial that I may or may not make in the future, but I think it's very useful.
That seems amazing. Like that. See, to me, that's the type of thing where you open up the door for somebody who doesn't have any, doesn't have eye for animation necessarily, or doesn't have the patience to figure out the interpolation and all that, where they could just, using technical skills, be able to start producing some useful animation stuff, as if they had a workflow for that. So obviously, I'm a huge advocate in getting out more tutorials, more information. But I think one of the things that I'm sure there's several things holding you back from doing it, but I'm sure one of the things holding you back is whether or not you think people would actually use it, because you don't want to dedicate all this time to putting together a tutorial video if nobody's going to take interest in it. So I would say any of you listening to this, if you're interested in seeing more Fallout 4 animation come out and you want to be a part of it, you should show your support to Pandamic in whatever way you can. Go watch his videos, join his animation channel, and encourage him and thank him for putting together this information. And maybe we'll see some more, because there's a lot of information I'm sure you've learned over the years in here that just isn't documented anywhere, or is documented very poorly for people.
Yeah, like when you do this kind of stuff in like 3D programs, or I guess just when you do something so specific like this,
Yeah.
you always come across very unique ways of doing things that work really easily for you, and then you may, like I've seen in my Discord server where there's people who are having trouble doing some stuff with animations, and I'm just thinking to myself, I figured out this really weird way of doing that thing they want to figure out, but there's no way that I don't think they can actually figure it out if I just don't tell them how to do it.
Right.
Like more tutorials are very useful, but you need to make them for the people who you want to use them. Don't expect to get a million views on a tutorial. You got to do it for the people who you want to be creating things.
Oh, I agree 100%. I do a tutorial every week, and they get like 200 views, and it's like, I don't care. That's 200 more people that now know that, so it's not just information locked in my head, because a lot of this is, it's earned. Some of it's earned accidentally. Like you're just trying one thing and you stumble upon something else. It's like, oh, that was actually really useful, and you can reuse that. And maybe somebody else will never ever stumble upon it, like you said, like that other animator asked a question. You're like, oh, I happen to have stumbled upon this solution. It could take them years before they discover the same thing, and you could shortcut that for them instantaneously and jump them ahead. This is standing on the shoulders of giants principle, is that sharing information like this is a great way to advance a field, because you save people those potentially years of struggling through the basics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I really very much hope to see more movement in that channel. I'm in it myself, even though I don't do animation, just because I've been really keen on seeing what kind of people out there are working on this stuff and seeing more of them going. And I wanted to get a chance to talk to you. I'm glad we got a chance to catch up here. Before we end, I wanted to know if there is any advice you would give to people who haven't started yet, maybe who are Fallout 4, they're passionate about Fallout 4, they can acquire, they can arrange to get themselves a copy of 3ds Max. What is their best way for them to get started on this stuff?
Well, excuse me.
No problem.
Frankly, some of the specific programs that you need to do Fallout 4 animation, like 3ds Max 2014 or 15, and have content tools, you can't really get them officially.
Right.
So
you gotta be willing to arg this stuff.
Hey, I'm not saying I would do anything like get programs unofficially, but you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do if you want to make it as cool art, you know. But one thing too, if you want to make some animations or do something really ambitious, like making cinematic-ish videos for Fallout 4 with animated cameras, you the biggest hurdle is just going to be starting, because you would be starting with a brand new program. Maybe you never seen the interface before. You don't know what any of these terms are. You may look at it for 1 minute and then just quit and never look at it again because it just looks way too complicated. You can figure it out. Anyone can figure it out. You just need to put the time into it. You need to try to make things, and eventually anyone can figure it out and anyone can do it. That's the main thing. You just need to try. You can't just give up right away if it seems too hard.
I agree 100%. And like for those of you, I mean, if people didn't hear this or if it didn't click for them, Pandamic, who created these amazing videos, which I will link in the description to this, started this in high school and figured it out from scratch. So like, it is not impossible for somebody to just pick up the software and just start going at it. And now you have the advantage of learning from his experience. So that stuff, he's got a tutorial out on YouTube right now. Hopefully one day we'll see some more tutorials. And there are a couple other tutorials out there that can also help you get started. For example, I mentioned the Rizzler has a full tutorial stack on how to create a custom weapon, which involves animation. So there's a lot of information out there. There's not nearly enough, and I'm going to do my part to continue to put out more information so that more people can get into this, because it's such a great, like Fallout, like Bethesda's games are such great platforms for creativity. As far as to get your ideas out there and to create things. You have this great universe to build on. You got a huge fan base built in who are looking and hungry for more stuff. And the tools, while they can be a struggle to use, are open and available to be modified in the way to pull off pretty much anything you can envision. And I think your dream sequence is a good demonstration of that you can take a game like this and make a beautiful film out of it. And it's very impressive and very inspiring. And I am very, very thankful that you exist and are in this community, because I love seeing people push this stuff to the limits. And I'm really excited to see what you do next. So thank you, Pandamic, for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you for letting me hear.
All right. I hope to see more from you soon. And otherwise, I think that's enough rambling out of me. Take care, man.
Okay, bye. Epstein didn't kill himself.
What a way to end.